What's up, folks? Just rolling out the next update in our Road to Adepticon series, talking about the list that I'm developing, how I'm practicing, and then how things are going. So I got in some more practice games, and just to run through the things that didn't work, right? So a couple things that really did work, I won both games, so that was good. Things that didn't work, I'm still struggling to fly CAD. Durge I seem to do just fine. The combination of Proton Cannon's Fearless I-5 seems to work well. The combination HLC and Ion Cannon just doesn't work for me. Like they kind of landed. The When you're looking at the damage of the rest of this list, the damage of the Ion Cannon just feels super lackluster, and I only ever did one damage. Even throwing the extra dice, I did one damage. I didn't apply the Ion. Even if I had, it wouldn't have gone through. So I was just looking at another way that I can spend those 11 points that may not be quite as effective, but it is. I mean, it may not be quite as varied, so I may not get the 4-die primary. So let's actually take a look at this and see what changes I made. Not primary. So I won't get the 4 dice in bullseye, which is why you take the HLC, but let's take a look here. So looking at what changes you could make, right? So, sorry for the wait. Da, 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 da. There we go. Yeah, okay. So I was thinking about this. So I looked at a couple different builds. So right now, again, I've got the Hevered Laser Cannon and the Ion Cannon. I didn't use Kira at all, but I can see definitely using her in different games. In this game, I didn't, but if you take that safety target lock on an obstacle in the first turn, so you're protecting yourself from being jammed, that just naturally gives me an obstacle I can choose to ignore, which is great. So she basically will trigger every game. And so if I want to clear up the points, CAD has a bunch of points to use, and it's a bummer to not use them. I can either go with the synced cannons at 6, and then actually let's try that, because I forgot that the points cost went down. I keep thinking of synced as 8. So we'll try synced, and then we'll try thermal detonators. Yeah, okay. So I like this. So the build I actually had was proton cannons, marksmanship, detonators, delayed fuses, which adds marksmanship, which is nice. And then also adds the delayed fuses for the thermal detonators, which gives you a little bit more leeway. Another thing I could do here is I could change these from thermal detonators to the proton bombs. Um, Not proton bombs, sorry. Concussion bombs, which I really like concussion bombs just for the chaos, but you do have to drop them once you start dropping them, which is the thing. So the thermal detonators are really good for automatically applying that strain. Let's see, and this doesn't show what thermal detonators do when they explode. Just go ahead and recap it. Thermal detonators. When this device detonates, each ship and remote at range 0 to 1 rolls 1 attack die. Each ship gains 1 strain token for each eyeball result, and each ship and remote suffers 1 hit or crit for each matching result. So it can deal crits, it can deal hits, and then it does also deal strains. So it's very rare for a ship to get nothing. So that would be just if you blank out. And of course, you can drop 2 of them. You don't have to drop just a single one. So you get the effect twice. 2 attack dice can deliver 2 strain or 2 damage or some combination of both. Or they could both blank out. You don't never know. But it's a good piece. I like the option of delayed fuses on there, but I had proton cannons on here. I think for the way I play CAD, I think I'm going to try the synced cannons. I'll see how many shots I line up and how many bullseyes I would have gotten. But yeah, we'll see about that. One thing that I really like about the Rogue is the chassis ability, which is dead to rights. While you perform an attack, if the defender is in your bullseye, defense dice cannot be modified using green tokens. So I believe that also includes reinforce, but it definitely includes evade, focus, and calculate tokens. So a ship cannot spend focus, evade, or calculate tokens when it's in your bullseye, which is one of the things that makes proton cannons so powerful on that ship. You line up that bullseye, you get a passive mod where it basically is a proton torpedo. It's a soft focus mod, right? Yeah, change an eyeball or a crit or a hit to a crit result. It's every other turn, but whatever. When you do hit, they really are impactful hits. So I really like the proton cannons on this, but with CAD, I do appreciate the extra flexibility of the synced laser cannons. I think I am actually, so I'm going to change this. So just to talk through, those are the options. I'm going to go ahead and actually change this. And next time I will do proton cannons and the marksmanship and delayed fuses. I like that option. You can really clear or put up more areas. You have a lot more control of when your thermal detonators go off. And those proton cannons are super, super powerful. Now, the thing is, if I play a couple games and I don't land any proton cannon shots, we'll change it back. But that's what I'd like to do for now, because this list really excels at taking some damage, but also doing really aggressive burst damage on offense. And especially with that chassis ability, that's really, really good. Um, so the other big change here that I haven't mentioned yet is I changed to Mando, the ST70. So I've been running Dr. Afra on this. I changed to Mando because the large base was really getting me in trouble. And despite the extra durability and reinforced activation on Afra, I really missed the high initiative and just being more maneuverable in the rocks. And then this is one of the more popular builds from the Gold Squadron podcast Discord, is looking at the Child for your crew for the 2 Force tokens, and then Mandalorian Optics to acquire locks without doing actions. So you can still have locks even before you do a red maneuver. So if you're going to do a K turn, you could target lock in the system phase before and hope that the ship you locked is still there when you actually complete your maneuver. But I found this to be a super effective build and it was fun to fly. I had to fly it fairly carefully because it does have issues with hitting rocks. And if you take any stress, it's very difficult to clear it because you can only clear it by going straight. So it makes you very predictable. So it's a funny ship where I do put gas clouds with this list because sometimes you actually want to be ioned because that's a way that gives you bank maneuvers that will clear a stress. So it does clear your locks, but win some, you lose some. And I was really impressed. So I really liked that. The damage output was comparable. The durability was actually somewhat higher. And the maneuverability was so much better that I am much happier flying it. Doesn't get in my own way as much. I have a lot more flexibility flying it. I don't immediately lose if someone gets behind me. Yeah, just all around an improvement. So I think I am sticking with this. I was not thinking I would be that strongly inclined towards it, but after playing it a bit, I definitely am. And then let's jump to the Rebels real quick before I talk too much. This list worked really, really well. So let me double check and see what changes I made to this real fast before I get too deep into this. This is basically the same thing I did before with just a couple minor tweaks, mostly to Tycho's loadout and then also Han's loadout. But this is okay. Yeah, okay. So I didn't make any changes after this because this worked really well. I really liked this build. Note that I do have the Deadeye shot and precision ion engines on Sabine. I really never ever use Beskar, and anytime she's taking a shot, it hasn't been with the attacker in her forward arc where Beskar would actually trigger. So I like the mobility options of these two. So the precision ion engines allow you to change your 3K into a Segnor's loop, and then Deadeye shot gives her a chance to actually deal meaningful offense, even just rolling the 2 attack dice, right? So you roll a single hit, you're like, I don't care about that hit, just flip that damage card. Really good. It doesn't come up a whole lot, but she's there to get objectives anyway. Her offense doesn't matter as much. The biggest change that I did to the rest of the list was, of course, changing the trick shot. I took trick shot off Han and replaced it with chopper crew, and then engine upgrade for that boost, which did come up in this game. I had a white boost, and it was really nice to be able to do that. I'm still struggling to fly Han. That's the place where I need the most practice in this list, because he did fine. I think he lost 1 shield and chased a bomber around the board all game and was the reason it died later. But otherwise just didn't do anything. I believe he did have a crate for half a second before it was popped off by a single crit that took down that shield. But definitely there could be more impactful in my games and keep them from being as close. So great piece. I need to keep it in here and keep trying it. I am tweaking some lists where I spend the 7 points elsewhere, but I do have a personal failing, and this is something I want to talk about in my tournament prep here, where I will tend to be so anti-meta that I will take something that I know is good and dismiss it because it is very popular, which this Han build is very, very popular. Definitely not seeing it as much as we did, but yeah, it's still very, very powerful. So I will still keep it in the list for now. I'll do some more practice and see if I can figure out how to use it better. And then down the road at some point, I still have time to swap it out for something else, which I may do. Then the other change I made was swapping Tycho's loadout. I took off a couple of talents he had to replace with swarm tactics so that he can then, in the engagement phase, if he's close to a ship, I can bring either Wedge or Boudica from I3 or 4 up to 5. So they can shoot at his initiative 5, which will give Boudica a better chance to shoot before getting the deplete. So Boudica gets a deplete token to do a bonus attack. So you throw 5 dice instead of 6 unless he shoots before he does the bonus attack, in which case you could throw the full 6 dice and still get the bonus attack. So that was the idea behind this. But also Wedge is a little monster. Just that deny, you're only throwing 2 attack dice, but if you're also reducing the defender's defense dice, that does damage, really, really meaningful damage. And that marksmanship predator was nasty. He was just re-rolling into hits and then dishing out crits all over all of the practice games I've done. That is one of my favorite pieces. The other thing too is I do have a 3-point A-wing in here that I could easily switch to or I've got a 4-point A-wing, excuse me, in Tycho that I could easily switch to a 3-point A-wing, but every time I'm running, I'm like, well, is he worth the 4 points? Yes, yes, he's worth the 4 points. Um, one of the key things that came up in our game was that he can do an objective action and then chain that into a red boost because he can do that because it's not being coordinated. It is during his activation. It's during his action step. He's still doing the objective action first, and he's one of the only ships in the game, and A-Wings actually can all do this, I believe, is one of the only ships in the game because their chassis ability is vector thrusters. After you perform an action, any action, you may perform a red boost action. So I believe all of the A-Wings then can do this, but what makes Tycho special is he can still do that after being stressed. So he can do a red maneuver, do an objective action, and then boost and to get the second stress token, but then, just be like, you know what, I did it. It's fine. Now, one thing I did want to highlight is one of the other areas I really need to improve is on my triggers, catching my triggers. So, an example, I had Sabine pick up a crate and point at a rock with the intention that on the next activation she was going to barrel roll and then go straight, and it would have been perfect. But because I had the crate, I could no longer barrel roll. So I revealed the 2 straight, went straight into that rock, and immediately took 2 damage. And then she promptly was shot by uh, what's his name, the scary one, Suterfell, who probably would have killed her anyway, but she would have been full health and had the rock on her defense as opposed to just having a wing poking out the side like she did. So, oops. And then I also missed the dead to rights on these guys, both of them at least once each and probably twice on Durge. So I really need to remember my triggers, make sure I understand how the objectives work. Likewise, also on Tycho, I did that objective action boost, and the objective action I did was picking up a crate because it was salvage, which he cannot boost after picking up a crate. We realized it too late to rewind, so that it wouldn't have turned the game around, but still, it was enough that it would have very much changed things. So I feel bad about that. Need to remember my triggers. So if you're commenting on this, let me know to remember my triggers. So that's it. I've talked a bunch. I do want to talk more about the Las Vegas Open that just closed this weekend. There's a bunch going on there, and that's something I'm keeping an eye on, as that is one of the biggest tournaments that happens before Adepticon. But yeah, we'll leave it here. This is where I'm at for now. This is my 2 lists. I've got Han, Bista, and Perceptive Copilot Han, Tycho in the A-Wing, Wedge in the A-Wing, Boudica Venge in the Fang Fighter, Sabine in the TIE, and then in Scum I've got Cad in the Rogue, Durge in the Rogue, Dace in the Hawk, Bosk in the Z95, and then I've got Mando in the ST-70. And those are the 2 lists that I'm kind of banging against each other to see which one I actually want to take to Worlds, to the last chance qualifier. I also, again, am looking at the doubles list building, and I put up a video about that too. And that's been really exciting because that opens up some very weird stuff. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I do recommend checking that out too. But that's it. I'll leave it at that. Appreciate the time and happy gaming.